All right, so we are ready to talk about theme. So this is just a quick intro video to theme. We're going to talk for several days about theme, or we may have already talked about theme and you're just looking back over this video for some review. But I just want to review or just talk about a little bit what theme is, why it's difficult, what theme is not, and maybe do some practice and talk about questions we might ask ourselves when we're trying to find theme. So theme, what is theme? Theme is the message or the lesson that we can take from a story and apply to our own lives. So that's the important part, I think. I think most students know that theme is the message or the lesson, but it can't just be the lesson that the character learns in the story. A theme is something that we want to take and apply to our own lives. It has to connect with us as people, us as the readers, not just the character in the story. So why is theme so difficult? There's a couple reasons why theme is so difficult to find and why this is a difficult skill to learn how to do. One of those is because there's multiple themes in multiple places, meaning one book can have more than one theme within it. So you might read a book that has 4 or 5 themes or 4 or 5 lessons that we could learn. So that makes it kind of difficult because everybody might find a different theme. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because we all have different perspectives on the story. We all have different understandings. So that can make it difficult sometimes when you think, well, I found this theme and somebody else found this theme. Another reason that it's difficult is because you can find theme anywhere in the story. It can be in the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, or the end of the story. So that can sometimes be difficult. When we're looking for things like main idea, we kind of have an idea of when we're going to find the main idea, or maybe we're looking for like the setting. We know it's going to be in the beginning that we're going to find the setting or we're going to understand the setting. But with theme, we can really find it anywhere. Another reason why it's difficult is because it's not always stated. Themes are normally implied, and what that means is the author doesn't just come out and tell us, oh, by the way, here's the theme of the story, right? Here's the lesson that I want you to learn after reading my story. We have to figure it out for ourselves. So that makes it difficult too, is that we have to do some investigating, some digging to understand what the theme or the lesson might be. And then finally, what we just talked about on the previous slide is that theme is difficult because it has to apply to everyone. So a theme is a lesson that anyone could apply to their own life. And we call these universal themes when it's something that can apply to any person. Meaning it could apply to you as a 5th grade student. It could apply to me as not a 5th grade student, as an adult, right? It could apply to a man. It could apply to a woman. It could apply to somebody living in the United States. It could apply to somebody living in China. It could apply to anybody. And those are universal themes. Those are lessons that we could apply to anybody's life. And that makes it difficult because, again, we all come from different perspectives and different backgrounds. And so that can make it a little bit difficult too. One way to make theme a little bit easier on us is to understand what theme is not. So theme is not topic. So we talked about topic a lot in the first semester. So topic is just one word that describes a story. So topic could be a word that describes the genre. So for example, if we said, this book is all fantasy related, or this book is historical fiction, that's not a theme. A theme is not like what the topic of the story is. Another thing theme is not is the plot. So the plot is the series of events that happens in a story. It's kind of like retelling the most important parts of the story. It would be like saying this happens, then this happens, then this happens. That is not a theme. That's not the lesson we learn. Another thing that theme is definitely not is main idea. And this one is the one that theme mostly gets confused with. Now, if you remember, the main idea is just the most important information from a story. And the main idea tells us what a story is mostly about. Now, main idea can help us find a theme or a lesson from the story, but main idea and theme are 2 different things. So if you're looking for a theme and you realize, oh, it's just the word that describes the genre, or it's all I'm doing is retelling the story, or if I'm only focusing on just the most important event that happened, then that is not the theme. We found either the topic, the plot, or the main idea, and we need to keep searching. So now that we know what theme is and what it is not, let's look at some questions we could ask ourselves to help us find the theme. So the first thing that we definitely want to look at for a theme are the characters and the plot. So we might ask ourselves, what do we know about characters and plot? What do we understand about the characters in this story? What do we understand about the plot or the sequence of events that happened? If you can't tell me what the characters are like, or if you can't tell me what the plot of the story is, you're definitely not going to be able to tell me the theme. Another important one is conflicts or problems that the characters encounter. Because normally when a character encounters a problem or a conflict, they change and they grow, and that helps us to find life lessons. So another question might be, what problems or conflict has this character encountered? Another one, like we just said, is how did the character grow or change from their experience? How is the character now different after going through the conflict or the problem that they went through? Another one seems pretty simple, but what's the message the author is trying to send? Just pausing and taking a minute and not even worrying about the character or the plot. What can we tell by the writing that the author is trying to get us to understand? Another important one is, how can I connect this to my own life? Because if you think you found a theme, but the theme doesn't match with your own life, then you truly haven't found a theme. You found the problem that the character had. You haven't found the theme or the lesson that we could apply to our own life. And then finally, what important part of life is this story about? And this is one that's going to depend on your experiences. For example, I am much older than you are, so when I'm asking about the parts of my life, I have more parts to my life because I've lived on this planet for longer than you have. So this one might be a little bit easier for me than it would be for you. But you have also lived longer than kindergartners, right? So you might have more life experiences than the kindergartners. So this would be a little bit easier for you to ask than a kindergartner, right? It's all about perspective. But just what important part of life is this story kind of focusing on? Okay, so now that we've talked about what theme is, why it's difficult, what it is not, and some questions that we can ask, I would say pause the video here if you are working on your guided notes. I do have a copy of this slideshow in this module if you just wanted to go back through and look at the slides if I was talking too fast for you to fill those in. If you haven't noticed by now, you're just filling in the blanks of the words or phrases that I have underlined in the slides. So if you need to take a break or pause the video right here to go back through and look so you can fill in your notes, that's fine. If not, let's practice. We're just going to do one practice today because we're going to do lots of practice with themes. I don't want to overload you on information. So let's read this passage and see if we can find a theme that would make sense. Georgia decided to take a sewing class, but felt very frustrated when she couldn't sew a straight line on the first day. This looks so easy, but it's not. Clearly I'm just terrible at sewing, she complained. Even though she felt frustrated, she continued to go to class week after week. Each week, her sewing instructor helped her. By the last week of class, Georgia finally completed a project, all by herself. She created a rectangular pillow for her bed, with 4 mostly perfect straight lines. So we know we're looking for theme, which means that we're looking for a lesson that we can apply to our own life. So if we think back to our questions, what do we know about the characters and the plot? Well, we know there's Georgia. She's taking this sewing class. She's not very good at it at the beginning. She keeps going. She gets some help. And by the end of it, she does much better and she creates something that's pretty good on her own, right? So what problems or conflict does this character encounter? Well, Georgia encounters the fact that she is not very good at sewing at first, right? That's a problem. She also kind of has a bad attitude about it at first. She says it looks so easy, but clearly I'm just terrible at it. So she doesn't have a very positive mindset. How does the character grow or change? Well, she continues to go, right? Even when she feels like I'm not very good at it, she's frustrated, she keeps going to class. She keeps practicing. She even asks for help, and her instructor helps her. And she finally completes a project by herself. So she's grown in not believing that she's terrible at sewing, and actually coming up with something that was really good and that she was proud of. So now we're just thinking about, what is the message this author is sending? I would love for you to pause the video here and see if you can come up with a theme. Also remember that theme can be different. So there's not just one right answer to this, what the theme might be. So take a minute to pause the video here and ask yourself, what is the message? What's the lesson that we might learn from this story? All right, now that you've paused, we've asked, what is the message the author is trying to send? And I think maybe a message that the author could be trying to send is that to keep a positive mindset when you're positive, and when you're not down on yourself, you can do good things. If you keep trying, you're going to keep getting better. Or even practice makes better. Maybe you've heard that saying before, or you may have heard practice makes perfect. I don't love that one because we're never going to be perfect as people, right? So practice makes better. Or that asking for help is important, right? Sticking with something is important. All of those could technically be life lessons that could connect to my own life. It's important for me to remember not to be too down on myself at times, right? To give myself a break. To continue working at something even if I'm not great at it at the beginning, right? To trust in myself, or to give myself a break from time to time. What important part of life is this story? Well, really, it's almost all parts of life, right? It doesn't matter what age, whether you're 2 or 102, you're going to encounter things that are going to be difficult at first, and you're going to get frustrated. And it's good to stick with things and keep trying, because you'll be surprised what the outcome is, right? I do want to notice that a theme for this would not be that if I keep trying to learn how to sew, I'm going to get better at sewing, right? This is not one of those universal themes. This is not something that we can necessarily apply to everybody's life, right? Theme has to be something that applies to our life, and what I just said mostly only applies to Georgia, our character's life. So making sure we understand that distinction too. So before we end this video, I want to remind you, if you are working through it the first time and working on guided notes, to make sure that you have all of those blanks filled in, going back through this video or going through the slide that I have on Canvas. Also make sure that you have, I didn't type mine up because I didn't want you to steal mine, but I want you to make sure that you write in what you think a theme could be for Georgia's story. So a lesson that we could take and apply to our own life. So make sure you have that submitted too. Once you do, you can either submit this slide, or you can take pictures, or if you used paper, then you can take a picture and submit it on the next page in Canvas. You may be watching this as a review, and that's fine too, because we're going to be doing a lot of theme, and we'll keep practicing. Just like Georgia with her sewing, we're going to keep practicing until theme becomes easier and easier.